Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with...
Kirk Herbstreit. Man, when John and I started the Dadville podcast, we had no idea what we were doing.
I mean, zero idea. That was till we found Anchor.
Exactly. Anchor is a free service that will help you build and distribute your podcast. It's so easy it allows you to record and edit your podcast right on your phone or your computer.
Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so that you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more.
That's right. And they'll help you make more money on your podcast with no minimum listenership.
So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Kirk, you look so tan and like ready for camera.
Oh no, I golf a little bit, but outside with my kids.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever filter you're using.
What is it? Our main objective of this interview is getting that.
It's just getting that shine.
Are you guys both in Nashville?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Are you down in Franklin right now?
Well, when we first moved down to Nashville, we were in Laurelbrook, and we lived there for about a year or two, and then we found a lot in Belmead. We built
nice.
there. So we built there about 7 or 8 years ago. And then all my sons, I have 4 boys.
Yep.
3 of them were in college, and one of them was at CPA.
Oh, yeah.
We were like, my mom's in her early 80s. My wife's mom at the time was in her early 80s. And we had 2 sons going to Ohio State. We were like, why don't we wanted to send him to a different high school in Cincinnati. It's called Cincinnati St. Xavier.
Yeah.
And so we decided to keep our house in Nashville, move up here where we are in Cincinnati for 4 years, and then move back after he graduates. Yeah.
Nice. Cincinnati is the city that, like, every single time I come over the hill and I see that skyline, it is bigger than I remember it every single time. I'm always like, man, Cincinnati is a big city.
It is. Like, you come around in Kentucky, you come down the hill and around the turn, and it's like right on you.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be there next week. I'm doing these backyard shows, these little private things, and I haven't been it forever, but we're doing one. I don't even know where it is, but in the Natty.
Oh, good. It's very different from what we have grown accustomed to in Nashville. I mean, I went back to Nashville. We get back a lot. I was back there this last weekend, and we went to a new restaurant. Oh man, steakhouse, right across from Beeman Auto. Right by there's a new Conrad hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It's right next to it.
I don't know what that is because it's probably new, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only been open in like 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. I love being, in Nashville, all the different restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, there's like Skyline Chili.
Then there's another Skyline Chili, a couple miles.
Another Skyline. There's La Rosa's Pizza if you want some pizza. They're you just don't have the.
Oh yeah.
Don't have that. And that's why I thought the cranes by now would stop.
Oh no.
Holy cow. They've intensified. There's more.
Those cranes have had baby cranes.
Oh my God, they just slowly won't stop.
They're slowly taking
So you have the Gulch on this side of Broadway, and then I don't know what the new thing is on the other side of Broadway, right opposite of the Gulch, but that's where there's growth going on over there.
Gulch Jr. Gulch 2.0.
Yeah.
Gulch 2.0. So Kirk, I don't know if you remember this, but we have met before.
Oh yeah.
Many moons ago.
Yeah.
One of my favorite show stories of all time, because I'm playing with Vince, Gil and Brett James. And I remember seeing in the crowd, I was like, oh man, that's Kirk. That's cool. And you're jamming along.
Yeah.
But one of the best parts, so Brett had that room sort of above the barn where we were all hanging before.
Yeah.
And I remember like afterwards and we talked, and I have laughed about this so many times because I mean, you were just it's right now, just the nicest guy. We're chatting, and I just remember you emphasizing so many times over and over, because something about music would come up, and you go like, and you always you'd be like, I just don't know.
I don't know.
Like Dave, I don't know anything about music. And I was like, okay, well, sure. And we'd talk a little more, and I'd reference something. You'd be like, yeah, I don't know what that is. I just want to say it again, Dave. Like, I don't.
I've come a little bit living in Nashville. I've come a little bit,
but I just
I know there was a record
you were so adamant.
Thriller.
You were just there's some guy
I was adamant about it. I'm adamant. But dude, I'm telling you, we'd only been there for a short time.
Yeah, you guys.
I'd never heard of songwriter night or
rounds.
I'm sitting in my chair like, he wrote that song? Like I could not believe it. I could have sat there all night and listened to you guys.
Well, what was so fun is that was the energy. I just remember we were talking, like you were just it was so much fun. You were just, your eyes were just, you were like, I can't, and it was like, you guys sit up there, and then you were just, and I was like, yeah, and I was sitting going, but you played, and then you
who cares?
And then immediately you're like, but I just remember the whole night.
I'm just like, I just can't believe. I'm fascinated with music where you guys come up with, I guess the words first, and then how does everybody make a song sound different? I mean, there's millions of songs and they all sound different. I just don't understand how that works.
Look, the thing about music, this is how I feel. When I'm writing a song, it's like this gift from above, right?
Yeah.
And you write the song and it's done. And then in between writing songs, I feel exactly like what you're describing. I'll hear Dave will play a new song for me when I'm in between writing, and I'm like, how did you write that song? You just wrote it?
That's me.
And if it makes you feel any better, if you take all of my college football knowledge that is up in here, 95% of it, Kirk, came from your book that I just read. And I don't even know what the other 5% is.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I just, it's just an area that everybody has their thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the guy that thought, and I may have already told you this, because I've become friends with a lot of these artists.
Yeah.
And I was friends with Kenny before I moved to town, just because you know how he is. Whenever he goes, he reaches out to athletes, And so I met him like in 2000, and we became. I have a little group of friends since high school, and still my best friends to this day. So I would go to his shows, and they'd come with me.
Mm-hmm.
We probably did that for 10 years before we moved to Nashville. And my friends and his friends were from high school, the guys selling merch and David Farmer and all the guys. And so we all just would hit it off in the vibe room before or after for 10 years. We almost became we were all best friends from high school kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
And I just assumed Kenny wrote, I didn't know the industry. I just thought he wrote every song.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get around you guys and Brett James, and I'm like, Brett's like, yeah, this next one, we were down at St. John's.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, what? We went, what was it? We went out last night or something?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
And he tells that story. And I'm just like, the guys that wrote all the songs are the ones that should be making all the money, and the ones that should be the faces.
They're definitely not making. You know what would be funny is if you and John, we should do a game show of you and John, because I'm realizing sitting that you guys are basically the perfect opposites. Like John's football knowledge and your music knowledge would make for an amazing game show. Just like a
Whenever
buzzer.
I'm in conversations with friends of mine, and they'll talking about college football, and they'll be like, I'll say, guys, I really don't know anything about college football. And they'll be like, yeah, but so and so.
I mean, like Herschel Walker. No. You're like, yeah, I got
no. And what's funny is that I've met. So my brother-in-law is a huge sports fan, knows everything about every sport, right? Huge college football fan, and I will meet some people at a random gala or something like that, and I'm like, okay, I gotta remember that guy's name because I know he's a football player.
Yeah, he's gonna quiz
and
me
I'll
about
text
it later.
Colin and I'll be like, hey, what does this name mean to you? And he'll just send back expletives like, this is wasted on you.
You idiot.
You idiots.
Yeah.
We did this event years ago, and for Mark Richt was added, his son was at this, and so he was like, hey, why don't y'all come back? And this is when he was at Silly, Georgia. John, that's the legendary, head coach, just one of the greatest men ever.
Georgia's next to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes.
Is that right?
Exactly. Okay. Let's go 30,000. But I remember my band, it was so funny because they just are not football guys. And we're in his house eating pizza, just kicking it with he and his wife and a few other people. It was just this wonderful moment of, you do this a lot, Kirk, you know those moments. And I just sat there laughing. I was like, I can think of 5 people, Annie Downs being one of them, who, you've been on a podcast, who would literally give blood. Give maybe an appendage to be in this room. And my keyboard player's like, now, Mark, tell me again what you work for the universities? And of course, is there a kind? I do, yeah. And he's like, that's great. He's like, what do you do there? And I'm just like over there thinking, there's something that's so beautiful about
which department are you in?
You know what's funny is a guy like Mark Richt or me actually appreciates that.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes, that's exactly right.
I like this guy.
Yeah, keep him around. Like I can actually trust this guy. He's not trying to get something.
Because John, our world, and I tell Kenny and Luke and all these guys all the time, like, you guys make people happy. They sing a song and they're holding their drink. We make people angry. Like Mark Richt will go from like he's the greatest coach ever to fire that MF. His whole career. For me, I can say I think Florida's going to beat Georgia, and they're like, I hate him. I always hated him. It's just like, oh man.
Well, one of the things that I thought about, when I was reading your book is like because there's some similarities. Like an artist puts out their first record and they acquire whatever fans they acquire, right? And then when they put their sophomore album out, it's always polarizing. It's always like you always get fans who get upset with you, right? Yeah. And I actually had this segment on something I did on social media where I went back and read horrible reviews of mine, of my second album, because you do a different album and your fans get upset. But eventually people just leave and they go, they're not your fan anymore, whatever. And then you're just left with your fans. But in your world, and I was so struck by like the crazy situations where you would describe like, the coach who like had a winning record, like the winningest record, but didn't beat Michigan, and how polarizing that is. It's like you're connected to the team. So like you never have that sort of settling of the dust where, people don't leave me bad reviews anymore because it's like, well, by now you've moved on, right? You're not still, but it's like, no, if you're a Buckeye fan, you're going to be connected to the team and then you're going to,
Yeah. That's funny that you guys would ever get any bad reviews on anything.
My gosh.
That's me being naive to that industry, but you make people happy. I just don't know how.
You do until you don't.
Exactly. Really? Well, the people who are mad at you are the people you made happy, and now you're not making them happy.
Exactly right.
They get mad.
They get mad because they're like,
yeah.
And you're like, if you want to listen to the first album, you can. It's still there.
Right.
Just go listen to it. This is a different album.
It's a weird, and I mean, Kirk, you I imagine with all of the teams, maybe even especially with Ohio State, with your time there, and obviously having played there too, but like. I think it's probably a little bit of the same. You bring these people joy, which is really sweet. They hear your record, they hear a song, whatever. And so they go, okay, now Dave, John, Kenny Chesney, whoever is now, I can trust him to make me happy. Like, congrats, here's your little pin. Now I've sort of put you in this little corral of people who make me happy. So the problem is then when you write the song that doesn't make them happy, or they're like, hey, wait a second. This is not the deal we have. You let me down. And so this is something I had to learn really early in my career is like the same people who get that mad at you, actually the reason they're that mad is because they like you that much. And so you have to really do this mental game of going, okay, believe it or not, this person is actually kind of coming from a good place because they really do care about you. It's just that anger, that love has been now distorted into this frustration because but it is passion. It's a very deep passion. I mean, you see that so much with football fans, where it's like you talk about Rick, but like they love him until they hate him.
Yeah.
And it's a weird, you sort of have to live. I mean, like John said, we don't have to deal with it, anything like that, but you do have to kind of navigate these
I've never been hit with a marshmallow filled with quarters like you have.
That is What a creative attack.
You got to tip your hat to the prep that went into that.
Great effort.
Yeah.
Great effort. Really? But the rotten tomato just splatting all over the back of your head, that's
just so you said this, and actually I wasn't even planning on talking about this, but I think this is really a fascinating thing you just said, and really huge kudos to you for this. How have you kept, because this to me, I mean, I don't, this is a whole other time for another whole podcast, but I think as we get older as guys and as men, talking about dads and Dadville, but like, it's hard to have friends, right? I mean, you look at you may be one of the busiest people we've talked to, Kirk, with how much stuff you have going on. And I know it's seasonal to some degree for you, but not really. How have you stayed friends with all those guys from high school? That's amazing.
Probably because they've known me since before I became a guy that lived in the public eye, and there's a bond there that's 100% genuine, and the love that's just real. And I think there's an appreciation from me that we just have so much history there that I'm a kind of an introvert as a person. And so when I meet new people, I'm gracious and polite, but I'm a little bit guarded on opening up to them. And so what I've found is I really need to get to know you before I can trust you, I have friends that trust first and then get disappointed.
Right.
And I tend to be a guy, I just ease into situations. And if because I have friends of mine today that I've met in Nashville that I'm really close with, but I went through a journey with them to get to that point where I could, kind of expose my heart and open up to them and talk to them about real things, because I don't know. I just feel like today with these things and all the stories that are out there, you just have to be really careful with who you can really talk.
Do you guys, do y'all have not discipline's the wrong word, but with this friend group, are there things what are the things y'all do I think that's the thing that's so hard, is that I'm realizing we've talked about a lot on this podcast with other men who sort of are in this space or write about it, but there's so much intentionality. You know what I mean? You can't with a group of friends like that, you can't go a year without communicating and suddenly pop up and be like, hey, we got our trip this weekend, or maybe you can, but do y'all have things that you've found that help y'all be close and stay close?
Well, yeah, our common interests, like for you guys, music. For us, it's a lot about sports. The camaraderie and the different stories that we've gone to. We go on trips together. We do a Kentucky Derby trip every year.
Oh, that's fun.
We'll go to a lot of times we'll go to a Kenny show just because. So we make an effort to connect in ways, and then I can behave in a way. And you talk to anybody who's in my world, whether it's TV or as a coach or a player, you might behave like a normal person when you're on your back porch with your buddies, but you have to live your life as soon as you walk outside of your front door, where there's a camera on you and a microphone on you at all times. And so when I get a chance to be with my buds, and it's not that we're up to no good, it's just it's just like you relax. I can be myself.
Yeah.
I don't have to be like, hey, everything's great. I can just be myself, and they know how I act because they've known me since I was 15 years old.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say, I'm sure that I have two questions about that. One, as you're describing that, I'm thinking about when COVID was just starting to hit, and it seemed like you made that you had a moment on camera where obviously this, the script is being thrown out, no one's sure what's happening, and you kind of have this moment where you're just kind of speaking your mind as you would with your friends, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes this, you made an accurate prediction that guys, this is going to be a whole thing, football's not happening this year, baseball's not happening, et cetera, and you really got a lot of heat over it, which I'm sure you've had many situations like that, and I'm sure all you need is a couple situations like that to make you really guard yourself.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're constantly, over your career, like, I've wondered how much of the real Kurt gets to come out, on camera, or when things like that happen, are you like, "No, I learned this lesson again. I need to, like, keep the walls up when Kirk's in front of the camera, it's rehearsed Kirk, and then I
Yeah.
can be myself, behind the scenes."
Yeah, that's a fair question. One thing I've learned in my industry is I'm not good at really pretending. I'm not good at having a shtick. There are a lot of guys in my industry that have shticks. Like you see them on TV
Right.
and you think they're that way. Then you meet them in person and it's like a completely different person.
Wow.
Yeah.
For me, the way I'm talking to you guys right now, this is exactly how I talk on air. The only thing is I prepared for a game that I'm calling or, a bunch of games that I'm talking on a studio show on. But I'm trying to be myself. There's sometimes my reputation is the voice of reason, on college football. I try to be a guy that's fair. I try to be, I'm the opposite of, which is very common in our world. They just kind of throw things against the wall and just say things just to kind of get under people's skin. There are a lot of people that like to do that because it's kind of like a guy who writes a story in your world or mine. It's like a clickbait kind of story.
Yeah,
people
totally.
read the headline, they're like, what? Click. Well, people do that on TV too. I've never really gone down that path. I never will. So when I get passionate or I get emotional, it's real. I'm not talented enough of a person to, act something out. And so what you're talking about was I said, hey, this COVID thing, because ironically, or I shouldn't say ironically, sadly, a friend of mine in early when this hit like March 20th of 2020, whatever it was, like a week into it, a friend of mine who's a dentist, really healthy guy in Columbus, he got it and he was in shape, really good health. And I would talk to him every day on the phone and he was talking to me and he was like wheezing and like, I was just like, and we're all watching on the news and we're all like quarantined and everyone's like, it's like the flu. And I'm like, it's not like the flu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can't go to the bathroom. It feels like an elephant sitting on my chest. He goes, Herb, to walk to the bathroom and back feels like I ran a marathon. And I'm like, and he goes, and it'll go away. And then it just comes back with vengeance, and I'm just like, and he had it for 13 days. He almost got to a point where he wanted to tap out because it was just so much of it. So anyway, I was dealing with talking to him every day.
Right.
When I went on the air and people were like, and I wasn't saying this needs to happen. I was just saying, this seems pretty serious. Like if this guy is going through this, I think a lot of people are probably going to go through this. I don't think we're going to play football. I don't know how you play football without some kind of vaccine. And then it just became a big, what does he think he is? Some kind of medical doctor? And so, yeah, I mean, you learn, but again, I'm a passionate person. And when I get passionate about something, I'm going to talk, it's like later that season, we got into the fall and they played games in empty stadiums, which was really bizarre. There was an entire movement and kind of the country was being divided about race. And at the time, I have a lot of dudes, buddies of mine who are black guys. And I started talking to them about their stories and like, I know there's racism, but I think of racism like KKK out in the sticks somewhere. Like, I don't think of racism like everywhere. And you started hearing these stories about guys and, things that they experienced. And you're just like, man, I didn't realize that. And then you hear more and more stories. And so I talked to a couple coaches of mine, friends of mine, one guy at Stanford, a guy named David Shaw, and he was incredibly intelligent guy. And he gave some really powerful quotes and it just kind of resonated with me. So we did a feature on, this is at the beginning because this thing's kind of turned and gone all kinds of places, but this is the very beginning of this. And I got very emotional. I didn't know I was going to get emotional. I thought I was just going to be, my two options in my head, because we were coming off a feature where they interviewed about 8 or 10 different Black players. And they all told different stories. And, they were saying like, if I have a Texas sweatshirt on, I get pulled over, I'm okay. If I don't have a Texas sweatshirt on, I don't know what's going to happen. And I was just hearing some of these kind of stories and I was like, this is ridiculous. How happening. And I thought when we came out of the feature, I was either going to kind of pull out a 7-iron and keep it in the middle of the fairway and just take it easy, or I would open up and say what I was feeling. And I thought as I started to talk, I'm just going to use that 7-iron, as a white male at this time, probably not the best time to have an opinion on anything. I'm just going to this is very sad. We need to, and then as I kept going and I read the quote that David Shaw gave me, I just, I was like, oh no, I could feel it building.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I was like, here I go. And then I just kind of stumbled my way through a comment, and man, again, you get 80% of people are like, thank you for saying that. And you get 20% that are like, how dare you say that? It's like, sorry for how I feel. I just said what I thought. But anyway, that was a long time ago. But yeah, you have those kind of moments, and it does make you kind of say, should I really say what I think, or should I just keep that to myself?
Dave.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Okay, no. So do it again.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Dave.
What's up? That's on me. Do it a third time. That's me.
Dave.
John, sorry.
There
Gosh.
we go. Yeah.
What?
I can't go till you say my name.
Gosh.
You might not know this about me, but
you're quite the cook.
Oh, wow. You did, you did know
Yes.
that. Yeah. I mean, your words.
I know that about you. And knowing that about you, I'm curious to say, what do you think your signature dish is? Like, what is the John McLaughlin special?
Well, I've got that, world famous truffle encrusted enchiladas that I do.
Okay.
And then obviously I've got my gluten-free mac and cheese with the basil aioli.
Okay. Now this is me just being honest, because I feel like that's a big part of Dadville. I don't know what most of those words mean.
Okay. I'll walk you through it.
Okay, great. But I bet, and this is just a shot in the dark, that you use Caraway cookware.
You
Am I right?
bet I use Caraway.
Come on.
And here's why. Because Caraway Home's non-toxic kitchenwares are all designed for the modern home and feature a chemical-free ceramic coating so food can be prepared with peace of mind that no hard-to-pronounce compound will leach onto your healthy ingredients.
Gosh. Listen, all sets come equipped with easy access storage solutions so that no stacking is required.
No, you don't have to stack those things.
Wave goodbye to the days of misplacing your lids,
That's
John.
right. The cookware set takes the traditional 16-piece set and boils it down to 4 essentials: a fry pan, saute pan, a saucepan, and of course, a Dutch oven.
The Dutch oven was my name on the basketball court.
I did know that.
The bakeware set, let's talk about that. Okay. It's an assortment of non-toxic baking essentials every modern kitchen needs, so you can get to baking goods without any of the bads.
That's right. Caraway products are made without any toxic materials like PFAS, PTFE, PFOA, or other hard-to-pronounce chemicals.
Over 25,000 people have raved about their Caraway kitchen. Now it's time to try it for yourself.
Visit carawayhome.com/dadville to take advantage of this limited-time offer for 10% off your next purchase.
This deal is exclusive for our Dadville listeners, so visit carawayhome.com/dadville or use code DADVILLE at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. Something I wanted to ask you, it goes in line with what you're talking about. One, just your opinions and how you feel about things. But you maybe as much as anybody, Kirk, it's like you have been on the front lines of sports culture, football culture for really all of your life, between your dad, your family, you growing up playing yourself. Now you're calling games. One of the things that I think is so cool that you do, and I saw a picture of you doing this, and I thought, what a cool thing, because I know how much you love stories. Your story is so fascinating, which John and I talked so much about as we were prepping for it. But you sit with all of these athletes before the games and get their stories. I think that's maybe the coolest thing you do personally. Is it not just you get to call, but these guys come through and you sit and you. I love that picture of you on your Instagram. You're like leaning in as you're talking to one of these guys. It's that to me is amazing, because it's not just, these are humans out there doing this thing, right? And they all have these crazy stories. But something I was so fascinated to hear you speak on and get your opinion around, because you've been, again, like front lines for this thing, is kind of youth sports culture. Like how much it's changed, I think, in the time you've seen your boys all do it. They're still doing it, as you said, your youngest. What is it, as you've walked through that, and then we have a lot of dads that obviously listen to this, podcast, 3 or 4 million, I think we kind of last week. But like as you're thinking, at least, but like, what is it that you've seen? And I think if you would have any wisdom to give, I mean, we have, John and I both have younger children, all under 10. And we're, as they're enjoying sports and thinking about sports, but what is it that you've noticed, one, from sitting and talking to these guys now in 2022, but also just with your boys, and how are you thinking about that now? Like, what is it that you would give wisdom toward as our kids are starting to play sports, and where, as you said so well, like there's so much vitriol, there's so much like, people that are mad about what you're doing or not doing. And I sit at the sidelines, and this hasn't changed a lot, but you just hear these people getting so mad and obsessed with their kids. Where's your brain with all that? That's a lot of questions in one. But
and you've seen the evolution of the culture when you were a kid versus, probably when your boys were growing up, and now 2022, you've seen that whole kind of arc.
Yeah, I think if you go back in time to when I was a kid, a lot of times my parents didn't even know I was playing in a game. They were at the game, and it was very common to not have any parents at our game.
Yeah.
And we would play, and I was, I was a kid who did pretty well in sports, but I tried to be a good teammate and just enjoyed hanging out and playing, but it was not select or travel. It was like, you had a blue shirt, John, you had a yellow, I had a green, and the guy in right field he was kind of looking around, and there were maybe 2 good players on the team, but we didn't care. Like, we play, and then we do it like a 2, 4, at the end of the game, and then at the end of the game, it was a sprint to get to the concession stand to see who could get the suicide where they get Coke.
There are more important things at stake.
Oh, and then we'd stay all day at the park. Then we'd go to the creek, and we'd take our uniforms off, and we'd have shorts on, and we're like catching crawdads. And I mean, we were there all day, and it was just, we were kids, right?
Yeah.
And nobody was like, your speed coach started at 3:00. Get your butt over here. None of that.
Right.
And so what happened to me, because I'm guilty of this, I'm not pointing my finger, I'm part of this generation. I think Earl Woods, Tiger Woods' dad, changed everything. Because Merv Griffin show, and Tiger Woods was like 3 or 4 years old. Pull up the video anytime you want. Tiger Woods hits a perfect golf shot. And that's how we all got introduced to Tiger Woods when he became a pro. And they were like, well, this all started back when he was 3 with his dad. And they would show that. My opinion, because my kids were right around 3, 4, 5 when that happened. Every dad said, that's what you got to do.
Holy cow.
Whether it's basketball, baseball, football, music, whatever it was.
Right.
They said, that's what I have to do. And they became hands-on, and then they became very specialized, and there was a hitting coach and a throwing coach. And then these companies realized, oh my God, I can make a business out of this. And then they started saying, oh, if you're not doing this, you're going to get left behind. And then I think my generation of parenting felt a sense of keeping up with the Joneses.
Wow.
Totally.
Johnny's doing it over there, and Tommy's doing it. We're not doing it. We got to do it. If they're doing it, we're going to get left behind. And so then everybody started doing it. And I think it's just grown and grown. And now you don't have a blue and a yellow and a green shirt. Now you're travel at 6. And these coaches are out of their effing minds, coaching like they're in the World Series Game 7 in like coach pitch. Nobody cares. There's no press conference after, but they're like, the kids don't even know the ground ball to shortstop. He's looking at the ball like, wow, look at the ball. And they're like, throw it. And then he throws it over the first baseman's head. And instead of everyone just remaining calm, they're telling them to run the bait, and they're just running. It's like 35-28 game. It's like, what are we doing?
Totally.
Yeah. And it's just, it only gets worse, as they get older, the pressure, and these parents don't hope that their kid one day will make it. No. Their kid is
if they do it right, if they parent it right.
And anybody who gets in the way, it's like a snowplow. Anybody, a referee, an opposing coach, an opposing player, opposing parent of another team, a teacher who doesn't see eye to eye and gives them a bad grade. Anybody who gets in the way of our kids, we clear out of the way and allow our kid to never have any any kind of scabs on him of any kind. He has he's never been challenged. He's never had any issues. And to me, because I experienced this as a parent, thank God I kind of stepped away from that. And I said, okay, my kids went to Montgomery Bell Academy. They would come home with like a 27 on a test, like 7th grade when they're first getting introduced to the culture there. And I would like be up at night, like dying, like, oh my God. And then I would put so much pressure on them on their homework and their quizzes. And it was every day I was like pounding the desk, like, and I'm like, what am I doing? This is insane. Right. So I just think it's an epidemic. It's in music, it's in sports, it's in school. And when I was coming out, if you had a pulse, you could get into Ohio State. Now you have to have like a 4.1 with a 35 on the ACT, and you might get in.
Yeah.
And that pulse better be at 30 beats per minute resting.
Yeah, that's right. So Kirk, I can't imagine how much pressure you must have felt, because here you are, as your face is synonymous with sort of football and especially college football. And then I'm literally thinking, I'm like, if I was you and you've got kids who are in this, it's a great school here in Nashville, very competitive. I mean, sports are a big part of that, their little triangle of sort of, priorities. I can't imagine that'd be a struggle for me, feeling like I'm sure people are side-eyeing going, well, look, Herbstreit's kids are here and he's obviously sort of the pinnacle of sports guy. Yeah. That must have been a really weird discipline. And how did you handle that with your boys? Like, how did you?
That was hard. That was very hard. What I did was, because what you're describing, I don't know if this happened, but I felt like if my kids went and didn't do well, it was almost like, told you they're not very good. or if they did well, it'd be like, and my dream was they would just be treated like every other kid, and Montgomery Bell did a really good job. The parents there were amazing, but it's what maybe I put on myself. And so what I would do is I would constantly go to my kids one-on-one and tell them if I ever sensed anything, because I'm really big on paying attention to body language and facial expressions. And if I ever sensed somebody was in a funk, or I just sensed that somebody wasn't feeling good, I would just pull them aside and just talk to them and just be like, reassure them that I love them because of who they are. Not to just sound corny, but I really wanted them to feel this is not conditional love. Like, you don't have to be the starter or the best player or the captain for me to be like, now I'm proud of you. Give me a hug.
Yeah, totally.
I'm the opposite. Like, if you decide you don't want to play, or you decide you want to go over here, or you want to do that, man, I'm the first one that's going to high five you, and I'm in your corner. You are not. I've lived my life.
Yeah.
This is your life.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Happy.
That's great
with your life and what you're doing. And if you're going to play the piano, then you're going to work your butt off to be the best at playing the piano that you can be.
Yeah.
If you're going to play sport, then we're going to work as hard as we can to be the best. That was my only thing, is if you're participating in something, then I want you to work at it.
Yeah.
And other than that, I just try to love them as hard as I could.
Are you able? I'm literally like, I'm trying not to giggle laughing at the stuff, but I'm like, those poor football coaches. When you walked out, I'm like, hey, they're like, so you coming to the game? Oh, God, please. What packages are we running?
They're having flashbacks of their fathers coming to their games.
Yeah, they were amazing.
They're like, they're great. But I just can't imagine. That'd be like, I'm teaching some kid guitar or something, and I realize it's like, John Mayer's kid, or it's like Carlos Santana's grandson. I'm like, wait, I'm doing this? Like, why? He should be doing.
And you're gonna sit and watch me do it?
That's exactly right.
Horrifying.
I can't imagine.
Okay, so I have one last question about the whole sports thing, and then we'll get going, because we haven't even started yet. But like, so when you're talking about, I mean, I'm in lockstep with everything that you're describing with sports and music, academics, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's really interesting that you bring up the Tiger Woods moment, because that does feel like a really everybody knows that moment.
Yeah.
And I know as a parent, like with my girls, like if you don't have them in whatever, like they're not in lessons yet, or they don't have a private coach yet, you feel like what message am I sending to my child? Am I subliminally telling them, well, they're not as good as Sadie down the road, so that's why you don't have a coach, or whatever. And at the same time, getting to see all the things that you did, that we did growing up as kids, like music and sports, through the eyes of unconditional love for your kids, which is really, really refreshing and such a great way, puts everything in perspective. But again, last question about sports. You talk about, you mentioned in the book that I think you compared your Ohio State team to your dad's Ohio State team or something like that, or the Ohio State team of 2020, I think it was.
Yeah.
Versus, and the difference being just the culture, how it's just so intense. And back in your dad's day, they were playing offense and defense. And then there was a story about the guy, I forget if it was your dad or not, who played the game and then had his tracksuit on underneath. Was that your dad?
Yeah.
That is insane. But anyway, as I'm watching sports, right, and I feel like every time the Olympics comes around and world records are broken, and I'm a huge tennis fan, and Roger Federer's record gets broken by Rafa Nadal. Now he's at 22. I'm always like, what is the future of sports? How can this continue?
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? What's your prediction on? I want you to predict like you predicted COVID-19.
Yeah,
we have you on record right now.
The amount of money that's going into sports, right?
Yeah,
makes you wonder: is there a bubble that's going to pop?
Right.
Because, and we're all for capitalism. It's great that these guys are making what they make, but at some point, are the fans going to be like, I'm out, kind of thing. I feel like we're getting there a little bit in some of the sports. At the end of the day, though, I don't know how you guys feel. Dave, I know you probably watch a little bit more than John, but I don't know if there's, I used to watch Friends, right? And I knew when Friends was on, and I knew what time and what channel. And if I wasn't there, I was in trouble. I wouldn't see it that week. Now, nobody turns on a TV in a house. The only time people turn on a TV in a house now, in my opinion, at least where I live, is if there's a big, tennis match. You want to watch Nadal, or you want to watch Monday Night Football, or whatever it is you want to watch. It's the only thing that we still have. If you want to watch hockey right now, getting ready for Stanley Cup Finals, NBA's at the finals, you have to watch it. You can, I guess, DVR it and know the score and watch it the next day. But I think that's the one thing that sports live sports events has over everything else. As streaming kind of takes off and the world kind of changes all around us, I think people want to watch, if you're a sports fan, Tennessee playing Alabama and you're a Tennessee fan, that TV is on and you're watching. And so I think everything's changing in our lives.
Yeah.
But I do think that the popular sports in this country are remaining popular. The ratings are still really, really strong. And I think it's the only really constant thing right now that we have that is rating well. And there's still a big interest in watching it live. I don't, can you guys think of anything else that people want to watch live?
I wish I could say music, but I'll start crying right here on the microphone.
No, I mean,
I think you're right.
It's sad, really. I mean, I miss those days, but I've had to adjust because that's my now, I'm streaming, what's the Better Call Saul?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I'm streaming it, and it's like, I'll go through, I'll be laying in bed and I'll tell my wife, you want to watch? Yeah, that's why. All of a sudden it's like, we're on our third one. It's like, you want to watch another one? I mean, it's just such it's such a different world now.
Totally.
Compared to where we had to wait for Thursday at 8:00 when our show came on.
Yeah.
So I think live sports right now are still kicking, and doing well.
Yeah. And
go ahead, John. I have so many questions.
I'm sure. I know we have a hard 4.5 hours, Kirk, but we have so many more questions. I'm sure that every generation obviously has things that are changing, that are scary.
But do you think this drastic? I mean? Do you think this drastic?
I don't know. I mean,
our parents, My parents went from listening to radio, like on a Friday night, they might get around the radio and listen to a story or a movie, but on the radio.
Right.
And to a point where when they were raising me, I'll never forget, we went from 3 stations. We had to get up and actually move the TV, and had the ears on the top, the antenna, and you get 2 channels in good and the third one not so good. And so they saw that to a point where all of a sudden we had a cable box and we could turn the cable. But is that really as drastic?
It does seem like it's getting more and more, like exponentially.
Like their big thing was probably, oh my God, what's MTV? Why are they playing videos on the TV?
Yeah.
My kids won't leave. Why are they watching Michael Jackson Thriller you mentioned earlier? Like, why are they watching this? Why aren't they? We used to listen on the radio, and it's like, damn, now we're just going, I can't even imagine now. My kid plays this virtual reality video game.
Oh yeah.
And I hear from friends, they're like, that's the future. That's people are going to have virtual reality. They'll be able to sit in their kitchen and physically go to a concert and watch a concert and look around and like watch a band play.
And it feels like the next generation is going to lose everything.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I remember talking with my father-in-law once about what was that when he was growing up. And he said he remembers when David Bowie kind of hit the scene, and there was sort of that, like, parents were scared, like this is going to take the next generation down.
I can't imagine.
And it probably always seems, looking back, so, docile. Like the comparison to every generation, it's like every generation thinks that the next generation is gonna just lose it, and they feel like the comparison to what they had is not even a comparison. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think that's gone on and on and on. It's so true, but I just don't know if it's ever been as big of a change as it is right now.
Well, the change that is the most fascinating to me is physically what is. I mean, you kind of spoke to this a minute ago, Kirk. But you're talking about, like, if you think about your granddad's team versus just size. If you just put his lineman up against the 2022 OSU lineman, it's David and Goliath.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I get, one, I enjoy, truthfully, like, I'm a huge soccer fan. I love college football. I just like sports. I benefit from seeing guys and girls that are better now than they used to be, because they can just do more things. I mean, women dunk. Like, basically, if you play basketball, you can dunk now. And I mean, Lord knows the three of us can remember, like, the one guy in high school that would dunk that, I almost want to get his autograph, and he sat next to me in math. But, it was, but what's fascinates me, and I mean, this is like a TED Talk I would love to hear someone speaking on how we're just, the generations below us are getting better because they see it. I think that's why I can dunk now, is because when TV was at its apex and Jordan is dunking, kids that were our age were like, oh, I guess I should learn how to dunk. And so that had never been a thing before. Like, you knew a couple guys that could dunk, but now if you're playing basketball, you are trying to dunk as a 10, 12, 13-year-old kid all the time.
Yeah.
So you got to think 10 years from now, literally everybody in the NBA is going to be able to dunk, because that's just, so I think one thing is exciting because you see people better, and sports globally are still kind of new. You think about televised sports, that's a very new thing, like 56 years old. So you're going to understand how it changes so quickly because everybody can see it. It's like, oh, now I know what I'm trying to do, and now I can do it at a much earlier age. So one thing is you're seeing advances in these sports that is amazing, because people can just do things they can never do before. But to your point, Kirk, I think, when does that get unhealthy? When are we seeing obsessions with things take too early in a kid's life? Or when are we demanding too much from people that's just kind of like they're doing things to their body that are just not smart anymore?
I think we've already crossed that bridge, really. Going back to what we had said earlier, there's a documentary called The Race to Nowhere. As young dads, you guys should watch that. You should definitely look that up. It's it tells how, again, parents are putting almost such unrealistic expectations, both socially, athletically, and academically. And these, suicide rates for teens is through the roof, highest it's ever been.
Yeah.
And you throw in social media, which, can you imagine relating to being a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old. And these apps have these little icons where you can see like, oh my God, there's 20 people over at, Brian's house.
Mm-hmm.
How come I didn't
get? Yeah, no.
And so, or people making fun of, on social media, like what you wore that day to school or whatever, how kids can tease.
Yeah.
If a kid's going through a hard time, and he's not hitting those A's, 95, he got an 88, but that's not good enough. It's just, it's so much stress. And I think when you over into sports, it's, you made that travel team, but you didn't make this travel team. You better start working. I mean, you don't start working, you have no chance, because again, the expectation is go to the MLB or go to the NBA or go to the NFL. It's not, hey, let's just try to be the best we can be right now.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say that as we sit here in a conversation, but when you're actually in the middle of it, you're comparing yourself to other people. I'm saying parents.
Oh yeah.
Comparing yourself to other people who their kids doing that and their kids doing that. We're not doing that over here. We better up the ante. We gotta really start. And I just feel like, man, going back to when I was a kid, parents didn't even know where we were. Like, we were just in the backyard playing, or we were down the street. Like they weren't even involved.
Yeah.
Right.
And now it's just, it's not, I don't know how it changes. I just don't know how we can
downshift.
That's my point, where I think, we've crossed that bridge already with youth sports. And one thing I'll say also about TV, living it and being a part of it, when high def came out, the TV experience has really changed to a point where, me included, do I really want to go to the game and deal with the traffic and deal with the concessions and deal with the parking? Or I just want to sit here on my 50-inch flat screen and watch probably a better view of the golf match or the game or whatever it is. The production value now of these events, it's better than going to the game. So that's really changed, I think, as well.
Oh yeah. That is a very real struggle for me. I mean, we have so many, obviously you know this from living here too, Kirk, but like, there's so many great, but like, I'm like, God, we got to get out of the car. And then I'm just 10 feet from a TV where I'm sitting watching these people, seeing every blade of grass, It's like,
and more and more people are home gating. Have
home gating.
Have 3 or 4 people or couples over and just hang out.
Yeah, you just watch the game.
Well, and I will say, look, not to point fingers here, but you are to blame for a lot of this shift, because you get used to hearing Kirk Herbstreit and you want to, that's a part of the thing. So like if you go to the game, not only is it expensive, et cetera, but like that voice that like Chris Fowler calling Wimbledon with John McEnroe, like that is part of it for me.
Sure.
Now maybe bad example, because if I could go to the Wimbledon final, I would be 100%. But
I agree.
Yeah. It's a weird, I tell you, one of the things in this whole conversation, but one of the things that's been fascinating for me, I'm a huge Arsenal fan. Like I live, eat and breathe Arsenal. I love them. It is crazy how much listening to commentators or having headlines or Twitter, people you follow that are like journalists for the team or for a London newspaper, and how much what they have to say colors my experience of a game. And when we'll listen to me like I'm on the team, they haven't called me back in a couple years, but it's close. They need a 43-year-old 5'11" out of shape.
Just for reference, just to show how good those guys are.
Right.
They have me sprint against them. Just be like, hey, I know you had a bad season, but look, you're still killing this guy. But the thing that I find it, like, you can watch a game and it's really frustrating, like you lose, and you're like, and then boy, you start checking headlines and what ESPN FC has to say. And all of a sudden I'm like, we didn't lose, we got killed. And this is the end of the season. Like we shouldn't even play the rest of the games. We're terrible. And I'm like, hold on. I had to go through a season. This is hand on the Bible truth, where I had to turn the commentating off because it was so affecting how I viewed the game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's to John's point. It's like, because these, you get the wrong commentator and the guy's like, oh, this is just their season. Terrible. This is what you get when you don't have good coaches. And I was like, hold on. This is just some guys running around, like, just mute it. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is a much easier watch.
Yeah.
Or just how much, to your point, Kirk, it's kind of like high def. You just have all this information that's something that used to be like you're saying, you're watching your kids play and then you go home and it was like you won or you lost. Where now it's like, no, it's not just watching because this affects their grades and what happens if they can't get into college and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah,
right.
You know, and I feel like when you call a game, for me, my style is more of, I try to be a person who's going to help the viewer. I'm very rarely am I critical.
Right,
I'm more of, I'm trying to, like, if a guy throws an interception, I'm trying to explain why he threw an interception or what a great play by the safety because he read the route,
right,
up and made a play. I just think one thing that fans probably don't have an appreciation for is how much goes into, whether it's a soccer match or a football game. They're human beings that are out there.
That's right.
They're not perfect every single rep or they're going to make mistakes. And I think that as a broadcaster, it's important to understand that not everything that the coach draws up is the way it works. In fact, it never works exactly the way rarely does it work that way. So, the human skill set comes into play and, mistakes come in and strengths come in and that's just all kind of stirred up into like ingredients. Yeah. And it's up to you to try to make the most out of what you have to work with, on a given play or a given game. But it's too much fun to be critical.
Well, having your voice a part of like a football game is critical, I think, because there's so much going on in any given play, and somebody like you knows, that wide receiver completely or that quarterback, it looks like he just threw it to nowhere. Yeah. But probably what happened there is that wide receiver was supposed to go left or whatever, and that's a level, layer of the game that is lost on somebody like me. So having a voice be there to be like, well, hang on. There's more happening here.
See, Dave, I think John knows a little bit more about sports.
You know what's funny is that
I think he's privately playing this role, but meanwhile he's like, click, click, click.
I have a Herbstreit OSU jersey on underneath this. Sure. What's funny is all of John's that, what I just described, that I just described is from one Sports Illustrated article I read like 20 years ago.
Well, what you just described is fantastic. And it's
you got
it. Kirk, that's the other 5% that I knew was accurate. In there.
We hit decliner. It's accurate what you just said, because hopefully we can, I try to do a game like I'm talking to my wife or my mom. Like I'm there to try to say how or why something just happened, or for John, if John's not really into it, hopefully he can watch. You probably never have, but if you ever watched next year a game that I'm calling, hopefully you can be like, you know what, I don't know all the players' names or but that I can kind of follow this. And I can get something out of this. Like if I ever heard that from somebody, man, that to me is
that's great.
What it's really all about.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned how whatever the coach lays out isn't always how it goes, and it's kind of like, it reminds me of that Mike Tyson quote, like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah,
and that is very apt right now, because Dave and I had a plan going into this interview, and we have not.
So detailed.
I have like 40 questions about your book out of the pocket. It's a great book. So I just want to say everyone should download it, buy it. It's a great book. It was really great.
I appreciate it.
And there's so much in there.
Easy read, real simple.
Well, it was great. There's so much in there that sadly we're just not going to get to talk about. But a couple things that I just want to say is, one, I mean, you've got this guy, this great-looking, blue-eyed, all-American, who Bleacher Report put on the list of people in sports who, quote, stopped aging, right?
Congratulations on that.
Congratulations. We should have led with that on the cover. But I was struck by how, like, real and vulnerable you were about your struggles and your struggles in sports and growing up and all that. And there's so much about your upbringing and how many times you moved, and your relationship with your dad, and the divorce, and then they get back together, but not romantically, but they lived in the same house, for the for the kids and all that. It's just so fascinating. Um, but I just wanted to ask you one question about your dad. Um, and for those of you who haven't read the book, like, pause it right now, read the book, and then come back to this. Um, and also rate and subscribe and send Dave and I money. But you speak so kindly about your father, while at the same time being very open and honest. And you say that your dad, you felt like, always gave you just enough of himself to make you want more, so you're honest about the situation and his sort of shortcomings and all that, and that the long relationship that you guys had. What do you think it was that allowed you to be so benevolent toward that relationship? And is that how you felt, in 2021 as you're writing the book? Or was that how you felt all growing up? Or was that something that you had to just kind of finally come to?
Well, so my dad I was the classic case of, my dad was a football player himself. He was a captain at Ohio State. He coached with Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, and I grew up idolizing him.
Yeah.
And I lived in, you ever see the movie Sandlot? I kind of lived in a neighborhood like Sandlot, where we were just always out playing ball and doing things, and boys and girls, and we were playing foursquare, freeze tag, just everything. And hide and seek. That was all we did. And all of a sudden, my parents didn't argue. It wasn't like, an abusive relationship. My dad wasn't drunk, coming home angry. He was kind of like Richie Cunningham from the show Happy Days. He was just a very nice guy. All of a sudden, one day, my mom packed up a car and we were moving. My brother and sister and I were moving out. My dad had been out for the house for a couple of weeks. I was 7 years old. I had no idea really what was happening. And we moved. We were in Ohio, and we moved to a different suburb about probably 35, 40 minutes away. And then from that point on, my dad was never in my life the way I would ever wanted him. He remarried, and my mom remarried. I think I told you, I went to 9 schools from kindergarten to 9th grade. It was a hard thing for me. Again, I didn't enjoy being the new kid. I had more step brothers and sisters that I could keep up with, and it was just a weird time. And my one place I could escape all that was sports.
Yeah.
It was watching sports or playing sports. And, as I went through all that, and then my final place I moved was back to this high school in this area called Centerville. And like you said, my mom and dad been both remarried and then both divorced. They decided of their last 3 children, me, we've been through hell and back. Let's just give him some sense of normalcy. Let's move into one house together. Let him have a high school, 9th grade to 12th grade. Let him be in this house and go to this high school.
Oh, okay. So it was just you at home at that point.
Yeah. By then, everyone else moved out. And my dad basically, we were in Dayton, Ohio. My dad would drive up to Cleveland, which was like 4 hours away, and he'd be there working Monday through Friday. And it was just my mom and I, and then my dad would come home on the weekends. And all my friends, like, until they got to know me, they just assumed, because my parents would go to games together. They, they became friendly through after all that, which I really appreciated. But then as I got married and had kids, my dad remarried again. And then he had another family to raise because her kids were young. And he kind of unplugged from me and my siblings and kind of raised that other family. And so we wouldn't see him that much when I became a young adult. And so I think what the message in this book, by the way, that I wrote, even though I'm a football player and I'm a broadcaster of football, it's really more about dads and sons. And it's really more about, not a how-to book, but more of just my story and the things that I've experienced. And hopefully for people that they either went through something similar or they're going through it right now, maybe as an adult with their kids. But divorce is nasty. And if it's not, handled well with the kids, it can be a life. It can last your entire lifetime. You know, like holidays for me, when I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s, were a nightmare because I was worried about trying to be the fixer and trying to make everyone happy. And I felt a real sense of being in the middle of, because, you know, my mom would get emotional and upset if I spent too much time with my dad, even to the day, you know, he passed. And so it was really a bizarre, challenging thing to try to balance out. But I never got angry. My older brother did. I never got angry or had resentment, or I just had more sadness, more like, man, I wish I had, like you said, I wish I had him more. I wish he was kind of a procrastinator. He was put things on the back burner. He didn't like controversial situations. So he would just be like, yeah, I'll call you next Tuesday, you know, and then he would just kind of, Tuesday would come and go, and you know what, I'll be coming through there next week. And it was just one of those things where he didn't do it, not because he didn't want to see me, but he didn't want to deal with my mom. He didn't want to get, you know, yelled at or deal with something. So he would just be like, yeah, I'll do that later, kind of thing. Yeah. And weeks went by, months went by, and years went by. And next thing I know, he was really just kind of in and out of my life. So that was the guy that I grew up idolizing and worshiping. And then he had Alzheimer's when I got older, and then he was gone. He died of a brain aneurysm, and it's just like, and that happened in 2017, and so just kind of left to be like, man, I wish I had, especially at this age, I wish I had him. I'd take him on the road with me to games as I'm broadcasting, and he could sit in the booth and just, how cool would that be for him to do that? But I didn't get that opportunity really to do that. So that was really a big part of what the book was about, that relationship, and how much it was really good at times, and hopefully encourages people that are maybe going through tough times with their dad. Because guys, it's amazing how many boys and young men and men have a challenge with their dad. In some way. There's a lack of communication. There's a lack of, my dad thought I was going to go this route, and I ended up going this route, and he's never really seen eye to eye with me since, or whatever it is. There's just a lot of times there's either miscommunication or animosity between a father and a son. And this is just a subtle reminder to people to just try to build that bridge and have that relationship with dad.
So we have two questions we end with. We'll get to after this question. Last question for you. How do you think that, and this may be something you're like, dude, I need a whole other podcast for this, but how do you think that has informed how you've been a dad, like your experience with your dad?
Yeah. Well, for me, I took the good, because there was a lot of good from my dad and my mom, and I tried to use that the best that I could in being a dad myself. But then, like, my dad was not a great listener. There were so many times I would be so excited that one person I would want to tell something to, I would tell him. And when somebody's like in the middle of doing something and it's like, oh yeah, oh, that's great. And they didn't really hear you. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times that happened to me. Or I would, I would say, my dad, I just got back from game day that I really wanted to tell you. I was in Pete Carroll's office when USC was Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. I said, Coach called me into his office, and it was just me and him on a board, and he was like going over his defense, which at the time was the best in the country. And it was just, I was a young analyst, and I was just fascinated that he was taking the time to kind of go through for an hour all this different stuff, which really helped me do my job as a broadcaster. And as I would start to share any kind of stories like that, he would hear like the first 20 or 30 seconds. And then he would inevitably, it was his way of trying to relate.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to let someone tell you something. He would inevitably just flip it to, when Woody, and he would just go into a story about him and Woody, or him and Bo. And it was, and I would just, as time went on, I would just go, I would just completely shut down. And just like, I wouldn't say, what the hell are you doing? Will you listen to me? I would never do that. I would just be like hurt, like just, ooh. And it's amazing for dads when you don't take the time to listen to your kids, how painful, I'm living proof, how painful that is, to the point as an adult, if I'm talking to people, and I don't usually open up and talk to people, but when I do, if I sense that they're, I just immediately just like shake their hand and I'm nothing against them, but I'm ready to like a punch them. Like I'm just so angry, not with them, but it just brings up those emotions. So I just would encourage you. I know we're all busy, we got their phones and we got everything going on. Man, if your kid's talking to you, that's probably the biggest thing that I learned from him is I could be doing anything. If one of my kids say, "Hey, Dad," I'm like, "Hold on a second," and I just go.
That's amazing.
What's up? And I think it's because I'm telling you, if you never experienced that, that's awful. Yeah. So you said you have a lot of dads that listen to this. I would encourage them to definitely just listen to your kids.
Yeah, I love that. We talked to a guy once who said one of my favorite things I've heard on this podcast. The guy said that we were talking about, we were so fascinated by parents who were still close to their kids, that like had kids that were like, getting to where yours are and they still want to be together.
Yeah.
And this guy, our friend, Mike, said, anytime I'm around a family like that, I always ask the parents, like, what have you done to do this? Like, and he said, majority of the version of the answer is something like, we just try to pay attention.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're saying. I've thought about that so much because it's such a struggle with me. If I'm doing something to
we're
just
all,
stop.
We're all guilty of it. We're all, I mean, it's especially right now.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many distractions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's easier than ever now to not realize how distracted you actually are.
Yeah.
We had this guy, Kurt Thompson, on the podcast, and he talked about studies that they've done that show what happens in a child's brain when they even see that their parents are on their phone, or even when the phone is in the room. He said, if like the kid knows the phone's in the room, like dad's phone is in the room, it's sort of this weird kind of triangulation that they somehow, without even being able to know that they're doing it, they're calculating that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, Kirk. So you are a legend. Thank you so much for hanging.
Thank you so much.
We do two quick questions here to wrap it up. So, okay, I'll ask first. So what is the one, let me say this too, actually, before I say this, I was just thinking, and just with you, obviously, congrats on the new deal, by the way.
Thank you.
What a fun thing.
Thanks.
So with all the airtime you're going to be getting, John and I are just going to know, sort of as like a code word, that you are giving a shout out to us for every time you say interception. We're just going to take that as like, that's
you. Yeah.
Well, no, you don't even have to wink or anything. We'll just
come from here.
That's awesome.
Either that or touchdown. But I do feel like either one of those are not common enough. It makes it special. So all right. So here's the first question of the two. What is the one thing that you want your kids to know?
We've kind of touched on it. It's just they mean everything to me, and I don't just say that. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine on a podcast before I came on here, and he's a younger guy. He played at Clemson, and he's like, "Man, I'm about to become a dad. Early July, first kids." And I was just like, I always tell people this, like, there's nothing I can tell you because nobody could tell me anything from the time my kids were born. Like when your first kids are, in my case, it was twins. Mm-hmm. When they're born and you see them, it's just okay. Now I'm living and making decisions for somebody else. So I just hope my kids at the end of the day know how much they mean to me. That's like to my core. They're all this cool stuff on TV, but they're the guys when I'm 55, 60, 70, 80. I just want to be hanging out with them and their wives and their kids.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, we're at the last question here.
Yeah.
Many decades, years from now, Nadal has won his 40th major.
Are you more Nadal or Federer?
More Federer. Okay, we need 45 more minutes, real quick.
Federer is the epitome of grace. Like
yes.
Probably probably the greatest champion. I would put him in that like Tom Brady kind of level, like one of the greatest champions I've ever watched, and just elegant, just like classy, poetry, just
totally.
Nadal is more physical and athletic, and just a whole different level of athleticism and power. I mean, I love them both too, but I just think Federer, the way he carries himself, they're both arguably the greatest of all time. It's been fun to watch that era.
Yeah, it is funny how they both, like, Nadal is grinding out the match.
Yeah.
Like he will have a broken foot at the end of it, but he will beat you in 5 sets in 6 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And Federer somehow is like, is he touching the ground? He's I don't know how his body is moving that way.
He's just floating. You're
so
right.
graceful.
You're right. And then Joker comes in, and he's kind of like the wild man coming in.
You know, if I could, have written the story on Federer, because Federer is probably my number one. I love all three of them, but I wish I could go back to Wimbledon final 2019, which was a great match between Djokovic and Federer. And if Federer, he had like, I don't know how many match points.
Yeah.
And it just couldn't close it out. And then Djokovic won. I feel like if he would have won that match and then retired, I mean, he's 40 now, I think.
Yeah.
Or he will be. That's the way that story should have gone. Yeah. That would have been like what Peyton Manning got. That's what Federer should have got.
He deserves.
You know,
for sure.
Anyway,
he's beautiful. Was that your question?
You with us?
Yeah. Sorry, I was zoned out for a second. What's that?
Right now, Arsenal, that's near Georgia. Is that right? No, last question. What is it that you want your boys to say at your funeral?
Oh my gosh. Oh. Thankfully, I haven't thought of that question. Just for a guy that has had to live in the public eye, they know who I am. And I just hope, that you're dad to them. And I think I've done that up to this point. There's the guy that you're on TV, and then there's the guy that you are every day, walking around and, in your boxer briefs around the house, and I just hope they know, and they do, but they know how much this world right here in this house, how much this means to me and how I treated them. I didn't ever put a persona on. I was as real as I could be. And, they knew how much I would be at every event that they ever participated in. I mean, I would go to game day, fly back on Friday, go to their games, not to be patted on the back in any way, but because I didn't want to, I would either retire or I would have to fly back to their games because I'm not missing anything that they were involved with. So hopefully they just know how much they were a priority to both my wife and I. But at the end of the day, just he was dad to us. He was a real person who gave us everything that he had. That's what I hope.
That's great.
Yeah, it's so good. You are such a stud. Thank you so much for your time.
Man, thank you.
And the book is great again. It's a must read.
Yeah,
and congrats on the new season. Hope everything goes well, and let us know if you need some color commentary, okay?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Hey, I got your number now. I'll shoot you a text next time I come to Nashville.
Yeah, come through. Grab
some lunch.
That's great.
All right.
Good to see you. Thanks
Good luck to you guys.
Yes, thanks.
Dadville.